there are smaller presses that will give you, maybe they'll say, hey, you get half of all the royalties, but no advance. That's fine, but the thing is, if you're not getting any money up front, it means that, among other things, A, now you don't have any money up front, and money is good. But B, it means that their investment may not be as great. Like, you want your publisher to have something on the line. You want them to be vitally interested in selling your book. They should only get paid, and this is true of publishers, agents, and anybody else you work with, they should only get paid if you get paid, right? So never pay a publisher to publish your work. Never pay an agent to take a look at your work. The money should always flow to you, and they get a cut of what you make. Like, your agent maybe gets 10% of everything you make, but they only get money if you make money. So that's an incentive for them to go bring you work.
So when you were selecting a publisher, I know you publish as well.
Yeah.
When you're looking at different publishers, what are specifically the things you look for in a publisher, besides they've actually published something before you approach them?
I think that the biggest thing to look for with a publisher is, do they publish work like yours? Because that way you can see, is the audience going to recognize, like, oh, I like what Tor publishes. I know how to find their books. Oh, hey, here's a new book also out from Tor. Maybe it'll be something I like. But also, you're really looking for distribution. You're looking for, do you connect with the editor? Obviously some of this stuff, like, you can't know if you personally connect with the editor until you get, farther along in the process. But, you want to be in good company, right? But also there's an element of just, who will publish you? You shouldn't take just any publishing contract, but sometimes your ideal publisher may not actually be the right fit for you. And there's always an element of shopping around and, again, getting rejected, like I say. I had the advantage of, with both of my novels that I've already got out, I published them through Paizo because it was the people who make Pathfinder, because they were tie-in novels. But I've also done stuff with other presses for anthologies and whatnot.
Okay, I've had this happen to one friend of mine before, where his work was nicked by a publisher, where his book disappeared, as did the publisher, and about 5 years later he saw it on the shelves.
Really?
Now,
that's super rare.
Yeah, it's extremely rare. It was one of those things where he was young, just out of high school, and tried shopping around, trying to find somebody, found a company in Australia, and when he went out to Australia 5 years later, there it was. They turned him down. They said, no thanks, we're not interested, and then that was the end of that. 5 years later, he was in Australia and saw his book.
Did he sue them?
I don't think he had that kind of funding, because he was backpacking at that stage.
That's it. Certainly in the States, I've never actually encountered that happening in the States. For the most part, and this is something that people often worry about, is like, oh, well, if I show an editor my stuff or tell them my idea, they'll steal it. A, that never happens, especially because they would be sued, and B, editors see so many good ideas every day. There's no, the odds of them wanting to take your stuff, like, if editors' jobs are so much easier, where if you have a great book or a great idea, they just want to buy your book. They want you to succeed. Like, there's no real advantage to them to, like, take your idea and then have somebody else write it. They want to find good books. That's the joy of the job.
So it's the equivalent of buying the golden goose versus killing the golden goose hoping to find more eggs.
Yeah, it's almost like this thing of, like, you go to a restaurant, order a meal, it comes out and you're like, this looks great. Ha ha ha, I'm gonna go home and cook it myself. Like, that doesn't make any sense, right?
No, fair enough. So, I think it's time we open it up to the floor. Questions?
Yeah.
I just want to check, by quick show of hands, who here is currently writing, thinking about writing, wanting to get this stuff published? We've got one, two, several of you. Fantastic.
You're in the right place.
Yes. So, questions from the audience. If you need my...
Yeah, do we have a microphone to run around?
No worries.
Go for it.
Right. Claire, there you are. You can use my microphone.
Yes. Yeah, because we really just want to know whatever you want to know. I could ramble on about agents and query letters and things, but I want to know what you guys want.
Okay, so I think I just want to know, when you are like hunting around for publishers and you think you found someone, what do you do when you come to the point where you realize that they're not the publishing people that you want, and then you have to go back out there? How do you let them down?
Well, I mean, it all depends on what sort of contract you signed. Did you sign a contract? Well, if you didn't sign a contract, great, because that means that you can just walk away. You know, and you have to be careful. Like anytime you sign a publishing contract, check. You know, really get somebody, either an agent or a lawyer or somebody, to look it over for you, because the last thing you want is to have some terrible clause where you can't get out of it, or they own your book forever, or whatever. It's really worth the extra hassle if you get to the contract stage. If you've just been talking to somebody and then they say, you know, oh yeah, well we want your book, but we want you to change literally everything about it, and you know, we want to only do it in ebook format and not produce a regular one. Like, there's no shame in saying, like, hey, thank you so much, but I'm really, I have a different vision for it, and I'm going to go elsewhere. Like, thanks. And then just go.
Next question.
Do you think science fiction and fantasy is still a viable way of making a living as an author, or has it changed these days compared to other novels?
I think it's totally a viable way. It's a very, very difficult way. It's harder than most normal jobs, I'd say. But I mean, and it's harder than it was probably, you know, in the 1930s or whatever, when the pulp magazines were huge. But I mean, I have a lot of friends that support themselves full-time as a science fiction fantasy author. That said, it often takes a long time to get to that point. So I think it's a really good idea to have a day job, you know, and have preferably a day job that you like, but at least one that leaves you energy to keep writing on the side, because it can take a very long time. Like, you can get to the point where, you know, I said $5,000 advance for the first novel. Yeah, but as you get into the middle of your career, maybe you start getting, you know, $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 for a novel, and then suddenly spending a year writing that novel is a viable way to support yourself and a family. But I know a lot of authors who, you know, sometimes are even bestsellers and continue to have a day job because they like it, and it comes with health insurance, and you know, there's a lot of risk in being a novelist, you know, entrepreneur. There's no pension at the end of that. So yeah, I think it's totally viable. I think science fiction and fantasy are doing better than they ever have right now.
Hi.
Howdy.
I'd like to know, when you get to the stage that you feel that you're ready to get published, and you do have some work available, but it's not necessarily completed, as in like 100%, how much of your work needs to be actually completed, and how much of it can be conceptual in your proposal of your manuscript?
So, if you're talking, are you talking more about novel stuff or comic stuff, or? Okay, so it's a little bit different from the, for novels, the novel has to be done. You gotta finish it all the way, because they want to see, if you're a first-time author, they want to see that you can finish things, right? They have to assume if you write half the book, even if that half the book is great, until they see the other half, they don't know that you can pull it off, right? They don't know that you know how to finish. So I'd say, for a novel, absolutely finish the thing. Now, if you were saying, you know, I have this idea, it's a 3-book trilogy, but I've only got the first novel completed, that's fine. Like, people do that all the time, and it's actually better to go in with one book written and say, and I could do this sequel and this sequel. You don't have to write the whole series, but you definitely need to finish at least the first book. For comics, it's a little bit different, because, you know, it's this episodic format. I think for that, you often want to be pitching something along the lines of, you know, either a one-shot or maybe like a 5-book miniseries. No comic publisher is going to pick you up for an ongoing series straight out of the gate. But in that case, what you generally want is to have the first script done, you know, the whole issue written, and then have, you know, a brief synopsis of the other issues to sort of finish out the arc. And then what you're also going to need is have some of the pages illustrated. Like, generally when somebody's hiring for comics, they're trying to hire if you're doing a creator-owned book, like something from Image, they want to hire the whole creative team. So they want you to have already put together your artist, your letterer, you know, really the whole package. And they want to see evidence of that. Occasionally, if you're just applying to write for somebody else's stuff, maybe they'll look at just a spec script where it's just a script, but I think that's a really hard way to get in these days. Other questions?
Nope. Right.
Yeah. How about, let's, I'm trying to think of like what sort of quick warnings I should give people or something about getting published or something. For good advice. Agents. Agents are great. You should probably get an agent if you're at the point where you are shopping around a novel. Until you're at the point where you're actually sending a novel that is finished to publishers, you don't need an agent. If you're doing short story work or role-playing game work, you don't need an agent. Comics, maybe when you get big, but you probably don't need an agent. But in the novel world, it'll definitely help you out because they can get you more money, they can get you in the door with a better publisher, they can get you, they can give you great advice on your novel. Like they can help you polish that thing. And so the process for both novel, you know, trying to sell a novel and trying to get an agent is almost identical. Basically what you're doing is you're taking your novel, you're getting it as good as you can, and then you make a big list of all the agents or publishers that you would want to work with, and then you just rank them in order of how much you want to work with them, and then you start at the top, you send out your manuscript and say, here's who I am, here's my book, I would love to work with you if you're interested. And they say, no thanks. And then you just take that and you go down to the next person on your list and you send it out again. And you just keep doing that until you get to somebody who actually wants, you know, loves the book and wants to work with you.
So far, the ruling seems to be have a thick skin.
Yes.
And have a thick skin. Get used to rejection. Bring in an agent and a publisher when the time is right.
Yeah.
You've probably heard this question a few times. How do you know your novel's ready?
So, different ways for the, let's see. Honestly, you probably don't know, because I don't know when my novel's ready. All I know is when I don't have any more ideas for how to make it better. You know, I think if I can read through my book and see, oh, there's kind of a hole there, then I need to fix it. But otherwise, like when I get to the point where I'm like, yeah, I think this is as good as I can make it. Like take it, you know, let it sit for a minute. Better yet, show it to some of your friends. Like send it out to people to read it and have them give you commentary. And then when they tell you, man, I really was bored in chapter 5, you know, quietly rage and then go back and look at chapter 5, you know, because maybe they have something there, right? And then once you've had that chance to go back and integrate some of those ideas, then just call it good enough and send it out. And if it's not ready, people will tell you. Somebody will tell you, like, hey, this book seems half-cooked. Like, it's still not quite there in the middle. So I think I'm a big fan of don't self-reject. Let somebody else who is paid to reject you do that thing. And then just, you know, you never know. Like the stuff that you think is just okay, somebody might love. And the thing that you think is brilliant and beautiful, everybody might go, yeah, okay. So just make a lot of stuff.